And he wound down the window. I had my headphones in, and I could see he was shouting something. Oh, what the fuck is going on? And he was looking directly at me. And he says, is this Shirley Road, Shirley High Street? And yeah. Like, where's the RSPCA? 300 yards up on the right-hand side. But I think to myself, there's 5 other people here. Why did he have to single me out? What is it about me that made me look like I'd know where the RSPCA is, as opposed to any of the other members of the bus queue I was in? And he definitely singled me out.
You look, you look like you care about animals.
I do. I like my dogs very much. I was pleased to get out today. I had the radio on, and during the day I like Radio 4. I quite enjoy. I've come to quite enjoy Woman's Hour.
You like to listen to the radio?
Yeah.
And
And
it's an 80s song.
Today on a Women's Hour, they were recapping from a show that was on yesterday. It was a debate, and the premise of the debate was, does porn empower women?
Oh, I saw someone responding to that.
And they were talking at great length about porn, and you had various people phoning in with their experience of it. One person who'd got into porn when she was 18 in terms of performing, and she felt she was now unable to create meaningful relationships. Men didn't want to know her, apparently. Other people who phoned in with more positive experiences, and men who were phoning in with mainly negative stories.
Mm-hmm.
And so it was an interesting, relatively wide-ranging and varied debate. But the whole time I was listening to it, I was thinking to myself, God, you know, I fancy looking at some porn. I didn't, but I'm not sure that was the purpose of the debate about porn, was to make me want... I turned it off in the end, because I'm like, I don't want to watch porn today. I don't want to get horny and frustrated. There's no point.
Yeah, the porn thing. I don't think I'd have, because I learnt mainly how to have sex from erotica and from doing it with people who probably knew about as much about it as I did.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't think I'd have even considered changing things up a bit mid-flow if it wasn't for porn.
Okay.
That's the thing I've really learned. I
suppose. Variety. Yeah. It's nice to keep moving. I reckon any more than 10-15 minutes in a single position you need to change up. There should be a little bell, shouldn't there? Ding! Time to change up.
Are you trying to hurt me when you say stuff like that?
No, but we talk about how you impacted my sex life this weekend.
You mean differently than I normally do?
Yeah.
We watched the first episode of a show called Backstrom this week, and we like our cantankerous. It's a cop show.
Okay.
We like our cantankerous, procedural with a gimmick shows. It's basically House,
yeah,
but if he were a cop. And he's played by Rainn Wilson, and
from The Office.
Yes, and he's pretty good. The first episode, there are problems with the first couple of episodes that we've seen. There's lots of nice things in the script and lots of nice things in the performances, and it seems like it might be interesting long term. But in the first couple of episodes, it tries really, really hard. Like the good thing about House was that although he was a narcissist and a nihilist and a very negative kind of guy, the writing on him was never dumb, and the show itself quite often supported his worldview, but there was also a weird, there was almost a sort of an equalising. There's that it's a bit of a cliche, but you know, he's not a racist or a sexist. He just hates everyone equally, sort of thing.
Oh, that's all right then.
But there was a smartness to that attitude. They never voiced that was what was going on, and
he was a doctor. Oh, the irony.
But the thing in the first couple of episodes of Backstrom, they keep pointing out That the show keeps pointing out that he's a bit of an arsehole. Like, to the extent that people voice their interpretations of him all the time, and he voices how much of an arsehole he is and how he doesn't care. And so rather than his worldview coming out through what's happening in the show and through what he's saying in the show, he keeps also voicing his worldview. So that's a bit, it's like the pilot episode especially, they're like trying really hard to make their point. But the thing that and it's not the sort of thing that would stop me watching a show, and admittedly it's not entirely rare in mainstream entertainment, but in the first episode, the treatment of sex workers through the character of a stripper in it is so far in the direction of being wrong that, like, my wife Amy doesn't tend to see things as politically as I do, and sometimes I think she'd rather I just, especially when they're dealing with the internet and cyber crimes in shows like Criminal Minds and stuff, she knows that the second that's going to be the subject, that there's going to be lots of eye rolling and tutting from me, and that's going to spoil her enjoyment of it.
I think we both have wives who'd rather their husbands didn't see the political in everything.
Yeah. But they have this situation where both Backstrom, the main character, Backstrom does this thing.
It's a horrible name, by the way.
It is, yeah.
With apologies to anyone listening who's called Backstrom, but it's really...
I think it's based on a series of books.
But it's kind of, don't you think it's kind of sounds made up?
Yeah, yeah.
And it's just a bit clumsy to say.
My favourite series of thriller books are written by Greg Rucka, and the main character in those is called Atticus Kodiak. So I'm not going to pick.
But that's marvellous.
He's pushed it. He's taken it. He's taken it just far enough.
Yeah, because it's not ridiculous enough to be amazing, but it's not normal enough to be like easily. It's getting in my way listening to this, because every time you say back, I'm starting to get angry.
It's Atticus Kodiak is the sort of name you'd give a fantasy bear, though. To be fair.
Well, I suppose.
Whereas
it's a little bit on the nose, though. Isn't it?
Yeah. No, exactly. But so what they do is, and what they used to do in House was, he would say something completely objectionable, and then about 4 or 5 different viewpoints would be represented by the people in his team, all of whom were smart and all of whom were written in such a way that their viewpoint could be considered equal to his viewpoint. I mean, he normally wins out because he's the genius at the centre of the show. But in Backstrom, they have 2 points of view about strippers. One is his, and it's... I can't remember exactly what it was, but basically there's his view, which is a conservative view, and then there's his assistant, which is supposed to kind of be the liberal view. But what he comes up with is... Can
I guess?
Yeah, go on.
Is one of the views that they're victims that need to be rescued?
Yes.
Excellent.
The liberal counter view is that his view is that they hate men, and that's the only way they can get control of the men that they hate. And the problem I had with this isn't so much that it happens, but that the story, spoiler warning if you're going to watch this, and this is the first episode, this isn't some random later episode where they get things wrong.
Yeah.
The story actually bears out his point of view completely.
Brilliant.
Now, that isn't how I see sex work or sex workers, really. And I guess that kind of ties into what you're saying about the porn thing, or one of the things you said about the porn thing. The main thing you were saying about the porn thing is it made you want to masturbate.
No, it made me want to watch porn.
Were you not going to masturbate?
I've told you before, there is no point.
Yeah, no, that's true. But yeah, so, because I saw one of the porn actresses that I follow was commenting back to the Woman's Hour about that, and about how that was not her experience.
Was it Storia?
No, it was Ashley Vex. She's homegrown. She's British.
I don't know her.
And she's really good, and she was saying that isn't her experience at all. That actually by doing porn, it's made her more open, and actually she's been in a relationship that she considers really healthy. She doesn't consider it. That's me being coded. That she has been in a relationship for 7 years that she doesn't feel that she could have been in, like a healthy relationship that she doesn't feel that she could have been in the way she was before. So it's one of those things where there are so many people in porn. Especially now that the internet opens this all up to... There are so many people in sex work, and the internet opens this up to cam girls and stuff like that as well, that, there are going to be damaged people in that area, the way there are in a lot of areas. Yeah. And some of them are going to get worse because they're exploited, because damaged people get exploited in every field. And some of them are maybe going to, find that through expressing themselves in whatever they're doing, it happening to be homegrown porn or whatever. I have to be careful though, because I do follow a few. I use TweetDeck.
Okay.
And I guess the main Twitter feed does this as well. It it actually shows you thumbnails and stuff in the.
I use Tweetbot, but it does in Tweetbot.
And there's a couple of there are a couple of pornographers who have done lots of writing on it in the past. People who make their own. There's Anne Arrowsmith, and there's a lady called Pandora Blake who I got to know through them writing about it. Specifically, Pandora Blake specialises in, I guess, spanking fetish, which I'm not really into at all.
No.
But obviously the intelligent tweeting and writing and stuff that she shares in her Twitter stream, it is mixed in with stuff where she's promoting work that they do, including pictures. So I have to be quite careful when I'm looking at my main timeline, and I'm in a public place, that pictures of bottoms, spanked bottoms, aren't coming up. Now, I'm not maybe on this episode, I'm happy to go into detail about the stuff I like. I'm being honest with you when I say that these fetishes are not ones that I subscribe to personally. So it's kind of, it is a little bit weird that the thing that's most likely to cause me embarrassment in public spaces is stuff that I'm not even really into.
Fair enough.
When so many things I am into could.
I think what troubles me when it comes to sex work is I get very uncomfortable with the way that the women who are sex workers are either victims or villains. And that makes me very uncomfortable, because all of the negative aspects of sex work, it seems to me, are created by men and men's attitudes towards women. And I think that is what needs to be worked on, rather than making the women who are in sex work the villains of the piece, because there almost certainly are victims in sex work, but I don't think you should demonise and vilify women in that. It is a job at the end of the day, and for some people it's a job that's been made with a clear mind, and it's something they've gone into. I think it's what troubles me is how male expectation can at times, it seems, be led by images of sex that they see on the internet or wherever, and that's a problem. I think that ties in quite nicely, I think, with, I don't think young men are taught consent very well at all, either at home or at school. I think it's quite positive. They were talking on the radio today that they're going to start teaching consent at the age of 11. I think consent and sexual education have to be taught exactly the same time. The first time you sit a group of kids down and say, the penis goes in a vagina and a man ejaculates and that's it. But I think you should say a man and a woman consent I think it has to be done at the same time. I think until we start teaching boys that women don't exist solely for sexual gratification, and it's a two-way thing. So sex should be sexually gratifying for both partners. And I think some of the conversation I'm having on porn, which I kind of agree with, is what's tricky about a lot of porn is it's men doing to women. It's not about women, if you were to believe most mainstream porn, women are orgasmic pretty much the whole way through sex. Because they're making sounds as though they're coming the whole way through any given scene, which is not my experience. In my experience, being with a woman and her achieving orgasm is a long and arduous labour. No, I'm joking. But if anything's a problem, it's that. It's that maybe certain aspects of porn and certain aspects of sex work, some men just don't know quite how to behave in the real world after they've viewed something that's make-believe, a fiction. Yeah.
I think the only thing when we talk about consent, what we talk about when we talk about consent, the only thing when we talk about consent that I not worry about, but notice happening a little bit, and where I work in education, I see this. Although it's higher education, not education of younger children.
So the people you're talking here are 18 years or over.
Yeah, and I don't really teach them. But the thing I have noticed among educators and among idealists and stuff like that is that I definitely think that we should be teaching about consent and all of the issues around it at the same time as we start teaching children about sex. The only thing I worry about is the fetishization of the word consent that you start to see happening a little bit, which is, and this is only really a side point, doesn't really impact on what you're saying, that like a concept like that, an important concept like that, it should be woven into the way we talk about sex education and the way we talk about sex full stop. And the actual word consent and the whole ideals around it, and it's become this separate thing with a capital letter and quotation marks around it, that it's really easy for that sort of thing to become a tick box in education, where they'll do their 10 minutes on consent in the first session that they do. I'm not saying this is what's happening.
Do you not think, though, when something becomes an issue, clearly consent is something that's not been taught in sex education very well, and in society as a large, in society at large, it hasn't really been something that's been discussed. Do you not think, though, that that's how issues evolve, that it starts off as a headline and it sort of gets a little bit but it's to force people to start talking about it, so it then becomes part of the fabric of conversation and then becomes normalised? I don't know. Further along, because it's definitely an issue.
I don't know, because certainly with things like...
how about safe sex? Okay, I use that as an example for what I'm saying. Back in the 80s, safe sex, massive safe sex issue, and you're always, when you talked about sex, you're always talking about safe sex first. But now it seems to become woven into the fabric of the conversation that people have about sex. So to me, that kind of feels like the same as where we are with consent, that it's what everyone's talking about. And you're right, some people will be, feel like they're having to tick a box to do my 10 minutes. But you need that to start with, to force people to actually bring it into the conversation to start with, and then it starts to...
Maybe. I mean, I'm not sure that's necessarily where cultural change comes from, but it's definitely... it can be one of the contributing factors. But I think about race.
But cultural change only happens. Cultural change only happens further down the line.
Yeah.
When it becomes normalised.
Yeah, but that's what I mean. I'm not sure. I'm not sure how much, once things become box ticking exercises, I'm not sure that necessarily always leads to normalising, because we talk about safe sex, and sure, we feel like it's something that's talked about a lot, but things like teen pregnancy, things like spreading of venereal diseases, it doesn't seem to have gone away.
No, and I think this stuff starting to being part of the conversation doesn't stop bad behaviour.
Yeah.
But it's still part of the conversation, isn't it?
Yeah, but it's not part of the culture.
Talking about consent won't stop rape.
No, but it doesn't become part of the culture until it could become part of the teaching culture, but it doesn't actually become part of the culture until fewer people until fewer teens are getting pregnant and fewer venereal diseases are getting spread and stuff like that. You know what I mean? So we know how to make things part of a teaching culture. we don't necessarily know how much of an impact that has on culture. And it definitely has some impact, but I guess what I'm noticing really is when you put teachers in charge of things, when you put people in charge of things like sex education, and they are the sort of people who don't really understand the issues they're passing on. It's just that they're the person who's ended up doing the sex education. Yeah. So that's when it becomes, well, we'll talk about consent a little bit, but it won't be woven in. We'll talk about safe sex by sticking a condom on a banana, and you'll all laugh, and then you won't use... Do you know what I mean? It's. I guess what I'm talking about is we need to be looking at making better teachers, not necessarily telling them what to teach. I don't know what I'm talking about at this point.
No.
I think that you're right, that consent needs to be part of how we bring up kids and part of how we teach them and stuff.
Yeah.
I'm just concerned about the fetishization of certain terms and stuff.
But therein lies the problem, is how do you affect social change? And you say, well, better teachers, but sure, I look at the way the curriculum is constructed, and it is a box-ticking exercise. You have to teach X, Y, and Z for a certain amount of time. And that's kind of that argument as well. And I know this won't be your intent, but that argument in terms of having better educators, well, I'm not sure that sort of stuff necessarily should be dealt with wholly at school. There should be some. I don't mind school going through the biology of it all, but the emotional side of it, that's what your family should be there. As parents, coming back round to us, I guess, that's kind of what we should be doing. We should be teaching not their current age, obviously, and we've spoken about it at length before.
Yeah, I think I might have misunderstood. I thought we were talking about in the classroom.
Oh, okay.
I also feel a little bit bad because that sounds like I'm throwing teachers under the bus. What happens is an awful lot of people who could be good teachers or are good teachers start teaching, and then they end up ticking boxes an awful lot of the time, which can bring anybody down. I want you to, as we're talking about erotic adventures and the stuff that you maybe dream about or read about, the several hour orgies, those nights when you just can't stop fucking. So what did I do at the weekend?
Oh.
How did I intrude on your sex life differently than I normally do, just by being in your head the whole time?
Well, we'd had a lovely evening. It had been,
you and
Nikki and I, we'd had some friends over. Jane and Steve, we always have Jane and Steve over. It was very nice.
They always excite me.
Yes. That wasn't it. And, yeah, it'd been a while since Nikki and I, maybe a week and a half, 2 weeks since we last had sex, just because my libido is shot to shit, as I've spoken about. So it's very unusual these days for me to be particularly libidinous of an evening. Normally I'll take my tablet and within an hour or so I'm asleep, and that's all there is to it. We tend not to, but Nikki and I were, I think, actually Nikki wasn't feeling very well. I was feeling quite amorous, so we were kissing and cuddling, and sort of there was some action going on, and I was in the moment. It was very nice, and it must have been about 1:45 in the morning. So realistically, you think we're not going to get disturbed. Scarlett's long asleep, no interruptions. My phone started buzzing, and as I've got an iPhone, as you know, if you get a message, it will then a few minutes later it'll buzz again and remind you.
That, as you know, I think was for the listener. I did not know that.
The first buzz kind of broke my stride. The second buzz, that was it. It was, and so by the time I'd read your text, it's basically I had that horrible deflated feeling of I was really in the moment. I was feeling really sexy.
Where was your phone?
It was on my bedside table. So
you reached out
after
you didn't disengage.
No, by the time I read it, everything had finished, and I'd in a flood of apologies, and it was you.
Does that not normally? I mean, I find that normally happens anyway.
What?
The finishing in a flood of apologies.
Oh well, yeah. So yeah, and it was you. So basically, yeah, you were sort of Nickus interrupters. You stopped.
I think
And I still haven't. So I'm quite backed up at this point, and it's your fault.
I'm very sorry, but in my defence,
Seriously, 1:45 in the morning. Who texts anything other than an emergency at 1:45? And I'm thinking, I'm worrying the whole time. I'm worrying about who it could be. What's it going to be about? Nick and Amy have asked us if Amy goes into labour, would we look after Noah? And I'm like, well, he probably wouldn't text, but you never know. Oh, God, it could be that. And so I couldn't think about anything else other than my fucking phone and Nick basically apologising for not making a big deal of my birthday, although they very generously gave me an Amazon gift card, which I spent almost immediately. It was great. But apologising for, and would we like to come round and have Sunday lunch at their house when they move eventually? Thanks for that. I mean, it's such a sweet sentiment, but I hated you so much in that moment.
So you thought that someone might have died, or it might have been an emergency.
Yeah.
But you didn't pick it up when the first
No, because I was trying to put it out of my head because I was enjoying Nicola touching my penis.
So, but I mean, so you were worried, but you weren't that worried.
No, I was enjoying having my penis touched, to be honest with you. And the worry started to increase after the first pass, and the second one was like, I can't block this out of my head. I have to look at it. It could be important. Fucking, would you like to come round to tea when we eventually move in a month or so's time? That couldn't have waited.
Well, in my defence,
yeah,
it was 1:30. I know that you've been up an awful lot, but I
was up then as well. I wasn't long afterwards.
I figured I could reasonably assume that one of two things would happen because to be honest. We've been thinking a lot about the house move. We haven't been thinking that like everything's in place for the birth. So I wasn't thinking that much about that. And my house was very quiet. Amy had gone to bed some hours before. Yeah. Because she ends up getting quite tired around 10 o'clock. So
like a normal person.
Like Nicola, I think, usually.
And me, I'm in bed before Nicola most days.
So I texted assuming that your phone would be either switched off or you'd be asleep.
I never switch my phone off, especially when we've promised to be somebody's go-to if their wife...
Labour babysitters.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, and also...
not that we're taking that responsibility seriously. Fucking hell, honestly.
I probably would have phoned.
I'm sure you would, but unfortunately, in that moment...
You were thinking? No, I know. Your brain would have been...
I wasn't thinking, oh, this is really lovely having my penis touched. I'm really enjoying this. I'm in the erotic heaven. I was thinking, who's that? Oh, God, what's that?
I think right, so... Yes, I'm very sorry. But
I don't think you are.
I assumed at 1:30 that one of two things would happen. That either you'd be asleep, and so you'd get the text in the morning, but I was thinking about sending it right then. Yeah. Or that you would be doing a model or something because of your insomnia, which I know you're taking tablets for. But I
never do model building late at night when I'm
or something, or watching Getting Dug with High or something
I love
like
Getting
that.
Dug with
I know
High,
you do.
yeah,
I
really
know
like
you
that,
do.
yeah.
See, I know you do.
Yeah.
So I assumed that if you were up, that it would just be you who was up.
Oh, it was sexy times, and you interrupted it.
Admittedly, because I don't go into as much detail about this. Because I think there's a sort of the fact that your wife listens to this and has done since the very beginning means there's a sort of a tacit approval of you talking about this stuff. But my wife doesn't. I don't think she minds.
We're grown-ups, and I think, we've got a child. Most people will assume that we have sex occasionally.
Yeah.
And we do, and I like it very much.
My wife doesn't listen to this, and so there's no tacit approval. So there's no tacit consent.
If I found out that you'd already had sex that evening...
No.
I'd be very cross.
We've been very busy and very tired.
Yeah.
And
this doesn't normally happen. I'm sorry.
No, but yesterday, there was some sex.
Oh, good. Bully for you.
Our friend Oki.
I hope for you it was an underwhelming orgasm.
No, it was great. Our friend Oki has a key to our house. And there was no reason why she'd have been coming over. She was on a date. She was on a date yesterday, so we were waiting vaguely.
We haven't got a key and we're meant to be babysitting Noah. That's nice.
No, but that's a relatively recent thing. Whereas she's been our go-to person for like looking after the dogs and stuff for a long time. After our dogs ruined any chance of you doing that again by being horrible.
They were a nightmare.
But so anyway, so she was on a date, and we were waiting on a text to see how that had gone, or Amy was. But you know, there was no reason why she'd have been coming round. But she does have a key, and midway through the sexy times, I don't think Amy really even noticed this. Midway through, I heard what sounded like, I think it was next door's door, but I heard what sounded like our door going and someone coming in, and the dogs getting excited and then stopping the way they... You know, interestingly, I didn't assume for a minute that it was a murder or anything. I just thought that maybe Oki had come round. And it didn't occur to me for a minute to stop at all. It just... So we went on for another 30 seconds, and that was plenty.
Good.
But so that was kind of in the back of my head.
I finished. I told her that's all there is for this evening. Would you like me to step out of the room so you can finish?
So anyway, I'm really sorry. I am really sorry. It's just that I'm in performance mode, and therefore I'm finding this all hilarious.
Well, to be fair, it's probably hard for you to be genuinely sorry, because there was no ill intent. There was only goodwill and sweetness intended with that text. So actually, if anything, I felt bad for how
angry you were.
Even then, I wasn't that angry, because just like my libido is so low at the moment. It's like, if it doesn't happen, it's so what? I don't care. I don't need to feel good anymore. I'm 40.
Have you been following the murder dog story?
The what?
The murder dog.
Oh, the
story.
Crufts dog. Murder dog.
Which was one of those tragic stories. But I went to the workshop today, which is the shop at work. It's not a workshop.
Yes, to answer your question.
And that's where I get all of my news of what the papers are covering.
Yeah.
And I was feeling quite... I mean, Crufts is... I feel conflicted about Crufts, and I understand that most of that is based on what it used to be like rather than what it's like now.
I'm very much of the impression that the Kennel Club has sorted its shit out in terms of breed standards, not creating weird mutant dogs that can't live happy and full lives.
Or huge culls.
Yeah.
Which I know used to happen a lot as well. But I still feel a little bit conflicted about Crufts. But I was still sad when I heard about the dog that got killed apparently by poison in meat. And the tabloids managed to make me... so I thought that was quite bad.
Yeah.
And then all of the papers are leading with, murder dog was murdered, and using the word murder.
Yeah.
And suddenly I feel like maybe, come on guys, maybe you're overstating it a little.
Yeah, I think the headline "Suspected Murder at Crufts" is probably less sexy than "Murder at Crufts."
Well, or I mean, it suggests to me that a trainer or an owner was murdered.
Yeah, that's true.
I'm sure there's another word we use for it when a dog... I mean, it's not like the papers give this much of a shit with all of the other animals that are being... Or even all of the other dogs that are being treated.
Cow killed for beef burger. Shock.
If we're covering dog killings as murder now, then really the papers, if they really care about dog deaths, I think they need to be covering all murders as all dog deaths as murders.
Or animal. I might have a story for them. We went out on Saturday. I had a lovely day out with my family. We went to various...
The fam.
Yeah, went to various places. But we were coming down a road called Burgess Road in Southampton, which is one of these large linking roads that you have in major cities. And we were stuck in some traffic.
Just very busy road.
Yeah, just outside an old people's home that's opposite the Common. Southampton Common, very large piece of open ground in Southampton. Largest open green space outside London and the south of England.
That's amazing.
It's very nice. You live very close to it at the moment, don't you?
At the moment.
And I looked to my right and saw on the pavement a dead squirrel. Looked like had some blood coming out from its head, and it was in such a pose that would lead you to believe that it hauled itself off of the road. Just got onto the pavement in the hope of getting into some cover. There were some bushes nearby, but just the effort was too much, and it died on the road there. I think the police should be investigating the brutal bastard that killed that squirrel.
The thing is, I mean, I appreciate the point you're making, and that is a very sad story. Listener, he did physical actions and stuff while he was telling that story.
I'm sorry to interrupt you. Is it ironic that my wife has interrupted my focus on the podcast by texting me?
What's she texting you about?
Let's find out, shall we? Sorry. This is exactly what happened the other night when I was having sex. Only the other way around. She says, "Hey baby, are you having a good day? Kiss kiss."
Oh. She's interrupting our podcast with foreplay.
Yep. Yeah,
I've decided that's foreplay.
Yeah.
Tenderness apparently is foreplay. Maybe I need reprogramming. I don't know.
So I'm replying to you. Not bad. Doing the pod right now, so I read out your text.
Yeah, I mean, but the only problem with treating every animal death as murder is that like squirrels, it's not like they're tracked. If a squirrel disappeared, I mean, that one is obvious because it died in a very public place. But if a bunch of squirrels suddenly disappeared or something, we'd never know about it. It's not like the police could cover it because they're not. We don't know their numbers. They're not registered. They're not licensed.
But why limit murder to dogs? I mean, as Morrissey said, killing for no reason is murder. Meat is murder. I mean, with his absolutely pinpoint 50-50 logic. 50-50 vision. Sorry. I realise now as well it's 2020 vision.
Yeah. Did you say 50-50?
I said 50-50 vision. That's even better.
Fucking Morrissey, man. He doesn't care about...
That's 30 better.
All of the cantankerous and potentially argumentative or problematic stuff I probably say online, and it seems to have been not really caring that, not even disliking, not really caring that much about Morrissey and the Smiths on Facebook is the one that got me hate mail. And I say hate mail, it's from people I know.
Johnny Marr was my favourite part of the Smiths anyway, really.
Was he the one who was in Electronic?
Yes.
See, I liked them. I like Morrissey's songwriting fine, but I don't like his delivery. So it's kind of I didn't respond to it at the time, which is interesting because in the sixth form, really, I was quite depressive. But his music his delivery seemed a bit depressive.
Yeah, well, it is,
and I couldn't be arsed with it.
No.
So, but then I heard on the Craft soundtrack, they did. There's a cover version of "How Soon Is Now," which is much more American indie.
Well, I
liked it.
I got into "How Soon Is Now" by really enjoying the hit by Soho, "Hippie Chick."
Oh yeah, because it makes use of the guitar.
It sampled the guitar,
which is Johnny Marr.
Yeah,
it's great. It's down, 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 down.
Yeah, pretty much.
Down, 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 down. Ain't no diddle-diddle-diddle, you hippie chick.
Hip, hip, hip.
Hip, hip, hip. Hippie chick.
Yeah.
Was that song?
Yeah, I think so.
I've been thinking a lot about... Because we've been listening to Taylor Swift's album quite a lot. And
you mean you and your wife?
Me and my wife.
I'm not keen on Taylor Swift.
The most recent Taylor Swift album and the latest Sia album and the latest Childish Gambino album. Mm-hmm. And for all I know, most pop music at the moment seems to be really making a lot of synth-heavy, very 80s pop influenced music. And I quite like it. I have to admit, I kind of dig it. We watched a film called The Guest, which was out last year, but makes a lot of use of that sort of music, but in a contemporary setting as well. So there's clearly a thing going on at the moment, which I hated the music at the time, but I'm kind of into it. It's fine. I quite like your Grimes. She's like a bit like that. Who's that?
Grimes.
Leanne Grimes?
No, Grimes. She's called Grimes.
Grimes. Let me write that down. Spelt G-R-I...
Grimes, but with a Z.
It's quite modern.
Yeah.
If I squint, it just looks like I've written gorillas.
Yeah.
With a Z on the end.
All right. I found the gorillas a bit dull.
But there's a particular. I keep, because I'm listening to this music, I keep thinking about one-hit wonders of the past and I'm trying to circle this one particular band that did one song that I know of that I can't recall. And it isn't Berlin. It isn't Take My Breath Away. It isn't Snap with the Power.
Well, they had 2 hits anyway, didn't they?
They did Serious as Cancer, Rhythm as a Dancer.
No, I'm Serious as Cancer when I say Rhythm as a
Dancer.
That was a Turbo D,
yeah,
I believe.
And I'm zeroing in on it, so when I eventually work out which song this is, listener...
Was it
James,
London Boys?
No, it wasn't the London Boys. I guess that kind of ties into what we were talking about immediately before we started recording, which is there's nostalgia music. It creeps me out that Bananarama might perform as their original... No. To clarify, we saw a poster for a local festival thing that's going on. Admittedly, it's only got Fatboy Slim as a sort of a retro act.
But he's not. He's still.
And he's still doing his thing.
I mean, look, right. I still was talking about this despite my absolute resistance talking to you earlier about it. But it's weird. Where's the line between a nostalgia act and a current... Are the Stones a nostalgia act?
No, you see...
Or are they like a current viable band? It's weird.
I know, and it is very weird. And I totally agree. The thing I've been thinking a lot about is the reason it's on my mind is that we've got... I think there are 2 festival event things happening in Southampton, and one of them is totally 80s infused, and it's all old comeback acts. I think it's the difference. I think it's the comeback thing.
It's like you've got Howard Jones and Bananarama and their ilk.
Yeah. So, and it isn't a hard and fast theory. It's just a feeling I have, because I had an immediate amount of resistance when everybody got excited about Kate Bush again, the few gigs that she did. But this is what she does. She doesn't do anything for years. She has a normal life, and then she comes back with something. It's not even really a comeback. It's just the.
She's been here for years.
Yeah, it's just it's the arc that her. Well, not even the arc, it's the line her career's on. This is how she does things. The music, she has a normal life. And then she comes back with something new and amazing, apparently, and everyone's enthusiasm seems appropriate then. And then you've got bands like the Stones, I guess, or our friend David would say Aha, although I haven't been following them, bands that have actually never really stopped. Although the Stones are kind of different, because they'll kind of come out with a new best of every few years and then stick one song on the front of it. And that used to be a thing that bands did rarely, and now it's kind of the model for some bands to do. But when it's like, there seems to be this real appetite at the moment for disco acts, the acts that most of us didn't really like.
Well, no, they're more sort of post-new romantic, aren't they?
Yeah. So you'll get the Bananaramas and the Howard Jones, and they haven't been around, and they're not going to do new songs. They're literally going to do the songs that we hear at discos or weddings or over and over again. And I do not begrudge those people finding a way to make money after all this time being away. For all I know, Howard Jones has been performing the whole time as well. And
they probably have. I mean, they've probably all had careers, we're just not aware of them.
But it's what I find perplexing, and I admit I probably begrudge it because I'm kind of on the outside of it because I don't really relate to it, is the appetite for this stuff. That people who used to make music have found a way to make money off the stuff they did before. I can't begrudge them that, because that's fame, and that's the weirdness of fame, and we were talking a bit about it before, and I'm sure we'll talk about it again. But that seems to be what we want, rather than what a lot of people want, rather than going after new stuff and finding interesting new stuff.
But I think the market for that nostalgia and the market for new stuff, There's certainly some crossover, but I think they're different. I mean, these nostalgia tours are based on, an appetite amongst people our age to go and see. I was really pleased when the Stone Roses reunited, but ultimately they're living off glories that are, now 30 years in the past. They keep talking about they're producing a new album, but whether it ever sees the light of day. But, that was purely fueled by nostalgia.
You mentioned Roger Waters, who is an interesting case as well, because Roger Waters, you saw him do...
A few years ago, you saw him do the Wall at the O2, which was fantastic.
Which, aside from the fact that there's an oddity, the Wall was very personal to Roger Waters, but also about Syd Barrett, wasn't it? So...
No,
was it not?
The Wall... No, you're thinking of Wish You Were Here was about Syd Barrett.
Right, okay, yeah.
The Wall was very much about... Roger Waters' sense of loss, because he lost his father in the war, and paranoia.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense then. I think I'd picked up the Syd Barrett thing at some point, because I always thought it was, at the time that I was listening to it the first time, I thought it was very autobiographical.
Yeah, no, Showing Any Crazy Diamond from Wish You Were Here was the Syd Barrett thing.
So there's the slight oddity of Roger Waters performing that without Pink Floyd, who I think are still... Have they finally split up, or were they still...
They just don't exist. I mean, Rick Wright, the keyboard player, died a few years ago.
Right.
Dave Gilmour, they released a new album, didn't they, Floyd, last year? So...
Oh, I didn't know that.
But it was based on work that Rick Wright, I believe, that was done by Rick Wright around the time they released The Division Bell. And that was 93, 94 maybe they released that.
But again, they're kind of an alter band who have a really... Their career as a band is on a really long arc, and they always brought out...
Lots of remastered reissues and stuff like that.
But Roger Waters returning to something that was kind of autobiographical, that was autobiographical anyway, that was very much his.
Very personal to him, yeah.
You can see him doing, seeing iterations of that several years on, and seeing how he chooses to perform it and stuff. There's something there.
He was very interesting. He was quite self-effacing during certain... He was very candid about how he feels about himself when he wrote that. It was quite interesting, certain parts of the gig. Whereas,
I think with a lot of the Stock Aitken and Waterman style revival thing, in a lot of cases, those weren't songs that were particularly personal to the people performing them. They're personal to the audience who feels that familiarity. But I don't know who wrote most of Bananarama's songs, but I know that a lot of these bands, the pop bands, their stuff was written by their producers or by songwriters behind the scenes, and it's kind of... There are a couple of different reasons why you go to see live music, aren't there? There's one you're interested in seeing an iteration of the music by the person who created it, and in that case, it's interesting if they play album tracks that you haven't heard before, or they do an unusual version of something, and you're like, well, that's cool, because it's like they're doing not a cover of their own song, but they're doing an interesting version of their own song. But it feels like a lot of what drives people to go to the big 80s nostalgia concerts and stuff is to literally just hear something, just hear the version of the song that they remember from... It's basically that it's almost like a holiday camp. This is so snobbish, but it feels like an almost holiday camp.
I know. Yeah, I think there was something about the pop of that time as well, that it was... I really despise that sort of pop music back in the 80s, so I'm naturally resistant to it. You hit on a really interesting point about hearing the version. Frank Turner appeared very recently on Scroobius Pip's Distraction Pieces podcast, which I know David Wynn's a huge fan of. But if you want to hear about a really, really interesting, in-depth look at what life on the road is like, and the evolution of a song, and how that happens from studio to stage, then I really strongly recommend that you listen to the Distraction Pieces podcast with Scroobius Pip and Frank Turner.
I mean, I find that stuff fascinating, and I guess part of my confusion about all of this is that I see it almost as the death of that. I don't think a lot of the time people want to see it ain't what you do, it's the way that you do it, done with a slow jazz reinvention of it by Bananarama. Do you know what I mean?
I do.
You mean you do want to hear that?
No, I do know what you mean. I do not want to hear it, either the original version or that was Bananarama with the Fun Boy 3.
Yeah, that's true. So, I mean, and so it seems to me that you're either going to hear the song exactly as you remember it, in which case you might as well just break out the now 80s hits album, or you're going to see a deteriorated version of it by people who haven't been performing or whose voices are going or whatever. Is your issue with this is really, I think, listening to you, it's about how much artistic merit you think they had to start with. Now, maybe in some cases, I don't know. Like, I like Rush a lot, the prog rock, and they're still contemporary. They're still making stuff. But if I go and see Rush live, I know that one of the things that they do is they pride themselves on being able to keep the sound correct. You know, one of the things identical.
To the kind of it's one of the things. You know, you'll go there and obviously they're a power trio. And you'll be listening to Neil Peart's drumming to see if he's getting these very precise drum hits or drum strikes correct and so forth. So that's a band that I'd expect to see a really precise rendition of the song I heard on the album. Whereas other bands I've been to see, like I'm trying to think of an example now, but sort of more indie bands, I quite like a loose sort of feel to the song.
Like a 20-minute version of Fool's Gold by...
I don't think they ever... maybe they played it live recently, but obviously they didn't get played live, did it, originally?
Oh, I don't know, actually. I just think that's the sort of song that any opportunity to make it longer, they'd probably go for.
I'd quite happily listen to John Squire noodling on that for 20 minutes, without a doubt.
So. I mean, part of it maybe sounds like I'm talking about credibility, and that's definitely folded into it. But, I mean, I don't think I was... The pop music I liked, and as you said, I guess a lot of it was off the back of the movement, the much less poppy movement of new romantic or whatever that was going on there. Like, I still think about the 12-inch version of China in Your Hand by Tapao on a regular basis. I listen to that a lot. And yet I don't have the urge to see Carol Decker and Tapao performing it now, because I feel like maybe they haven't been around. It had its time. Yeah. And if she can, and I do not begrudge I love Carol Decker. I do not begrudge her making a bit of cash, but I just don't get it.
See, I'm really cautious about this, because I kind of distrust all this, but the reason I distrust it is that sort of mainstream populist music was listened to by the kids that I hated at school because they kicked the shit out of me, which gives me a sort of distrust of these mass populist cultural keystones, because when I hear that music, it reminds me of a time and a place that I was sat on the outside of.
Yeah, I get
so
that.
Actually, if anything, I suppose what it's chipping into is the reason that I don't like it is because it rekindles sort of feelings of isolation that I had when I was younger. So I don't know if there's a similar dynamic with you. So I don't have a problem with 70s revivals, 60s revivals. I'd quite happily go to like a 60s pop music revival. I like lots of pop of the 60s, but the pop of the 80s I hate with a burning passion for the most part.
I think it's more because I don't think I'd feel like this about a band that did covers of music, or even like a tribute band for things.
But then who's going to turn up to a concert where people are playing Howard Jones hits? It's the whole thing. I think it has to be performed by them, doesn't it?
Yeah. Well,
it's so paper thin and lightweight. The art they created, maybe. I
think that's what confused me. I just don't get it. And there's the 80s were kind of a weird era anyway. I think I recently was thinking, and we haven't got time to talk about it today, but I'd like to talk about it at some point. It's occurred to me recently that a lot of what looks like a continuation of careers of people from the 60s and 70s in the 80s were actually comebacks then. There were a lot of comebacks then. Diana Ross, Chain Reaction, I think, was a long time after she'd been cult culturally popular or had stuff around. David Bowie and Mick Jagger dancing in the street, all of those things.
Travelling Wilburys. Roy Orbison had been in the wilderness for a long time.
We watched quite a lot of the Roy Orbison tribute performance or something, where he was playing with Bruce Springsteen, and last time I was at the In-Laws, and it was really impressive.
My father was a big Roy Orbison fan.
It's very, very impressive, and the roster of people there was very impressive, and I did enjoy the music, while at the same time, and I guess this is one of the things that Amy might like me to switch off on, while at the same time noticing how very white all of the performers were at the thing. But that's besides the point. But
they'd already stolen all the music off the black people, so they didn't need to let them in, did they?
But that actually, I can't remember what that film or performance is called, but it is really impressive, and it's all shot in black and white, and it's very beautiful. So lots of odd performers there. Elvis Costello in the background holding an awful lot of it together. It's good, but I just don't think I understand what. I've got a vague understanding of what makes people famous and continue to be famous, but I don't understand what people are getting out of it, the audience, the people around us who are like desperate to pay 20 quid to go and see this stuff.
But then they obviously experienced the 80s differently from us.
Yeah, maybe.
I mean, I don't think our experience of that era was... I suspect it wasn't the mainstream way of experiencing. The 80s are shit, and they were full of misery, so fuck the 80s.
Things I don't have. We talked about Murder Dog. Couldn't really work out what I've written. Tic Tacs down, but we didn't really have anything to say about those beyond that we're eating them again this week.
They're very nice. I like Tic Tacs.
Very quickly, probably the sort of thing that we normally could pin a whole episode around, but we don't have time to. But I just wanted to mention for the first time, and this is a really weird experience. I was in the cubicle, the toilet cubicle at work, sitting down, not weeing. And I heard the sounds of a cleaner cleaning the toilet next to me, and suddenly felt a lot of pressure to not leave any mess. It was very weird. I felt under a lot of pressure not to make that person's life more difficult.
I think everyone should always feel under pressure to not leave a mess.
Yeah, I mean, I don't leave a mess. But I was suddenly very aware, very poo aware.
If you're the sort of person who has a poo and doesn't use a toilet brush, if you adhere to the ceramic, you are the scum of the earth.
I don't think they have toilet brushes in public toilets.
Many do.
Oh, okay. Listener, you can listen to all of our past episodes at twogrownmen.net. That's 2, the number 2, grownmen.net. You can, the number 2, I didn't even mean to do that. You can hear more about my particular experience of my confusion at what porn is teaching young men on the extended beginning of a recent episode of We Have Issues with Jesse. That was the subject. It is an interesting subject. It does seem to be changing expectations a little bit.
Yeah, I think so.
A certain sort of porn definitely is.
I definitely don't. Let's not go back in there.
No. You can. Let's not go back in the facial.
Almost.
Bukkake
Come on, you can do it.
Thing.
You tried. I think that was a throw and a miss, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was. You can also listen to all of our episodes and subscribe to our episodes at your podcatcher of choice. Just look for Two Grown Men. You'll find us. I'm still using Pocket Casts for all of that stuff, but you can use whatever you wanna. You can talk to James on Twitter at
James MOMB, James Mom, and come and look at my new Twitter avatar. It's a picture of me sat in a BSG Viper, giving a thumbs up that lovely Steve Bishop did for me for my birthday. It's strange that I've never had a birthday where I think just about my favourite thing I got was a birthday card.
We didn't talk about your birthday this week. It was my instinct that maybe we should leave it a few weeks.
It was pleasant and uneventful.
Okay, good. So yeah, you can get in contact with us on Twitter. I'm Nick Sight. James is James Mom. I'm Nick Sight, and there is a 2GM Pod Twitter account as well, where you can get updates and updates about new episodes. We've got a Facebook page. You can email us at 2gmpodcast@gmail.com. the 80s thing, I feel like I come across a bit of a snob. I do have a question for the listener and for you, James, which we will close out the episode on, I think, because it's a bit of a puzzler. I have found in all of my various tidy-ups and culls of stuff that I am unable to let go of two particular pin-up pages from Lookin' from the 80s. One of Tiffany, I think we're alone now, Tiffany, in a jumper and I guess pop socks.
Yeah.
And, I mean, I think she's maybe a couple of years older than me. Mm-hmm. In reality, she's a couple of years older than me. At the time, she would have been about 18?
Maybe.
And there's another picture of her again in a jumper. Mm-hmm. Now, I think I already liked redheads at this point. I don't know where my jumper fetish came from, and it might have been this point. I've not been able to get rid of those pictures. I no longer have the same relationship with those two pictures that I did at the time. But is it weird that I haven't... I mean, they're still so beautiful. But I am conscious that I'm a 41-year-old man looking at, an 18-year-old starlet.
If that.
And I also haven't been able to get rid of my Mel and Kim poster magazine thing. So if there's anyone with a psychology degree out there, or just opinions, I'd be interested to hear what that means.
Email us at operationutree.com.
That's your U-Tree reference. Yeah. And we're out.
Bye-bye.
Can you move the mic down?
No, I like how this sounds.
For some reason, I'm getting loads of popping, and I know that it's not you.
I'm not popping.
I know that it's not you, and I know that it's the mics in this fucking studio, which is why I didn't want this studio.
I think you're imagining it.
I'm looking at it on the screen.
Yeah, but you can't hear it.
You can when you listen. Anyway.
I don't think you know. I think you hate this room so much that you're imagining things now. You're creating problems that aren't there, Nick. I don't like the atmosphere in this room.
I think you're imagining things.
Always.